All right, we have a little bit of a tricky Gemara today. We're sponsored by Eddie Chazan, L'Refuah Shalema for Yedidya ben Penina, for Shoshana Bas Penina, Simone Bas Rachel. We co-sponsored L'Nishmas David ben Chaim, L'Refuah Shalema for Eliyahu Moshe ben Chai Sarah, Yaakov ben Bas Yaleah, and for the Schus of Avram and Yam ben Shmuel Malki Yehudas. We're also co-sponsored by Shelley Zeitlin for Refuah Shalema for myself, Moshe Meir ben Esther Fradel, and Schus of his children, Eli, Orit, and Ora. We also want to learn Irving Fishbaum's son-in-law, Yisrael Meir, should have a Refuah Shalema. Yisrael Meir ben Yonah should have a Refuah Shalema, recovering from surgery today. And we also want to learn Lila Nishmas,
Sarah Bas Aryeh.
Barish Gesseman's mother, Miriam Sarah Bas Aryeh. Her neshama should have an aliyah. She should be Militzi Yeshara for her family, for all of us, and all of Klal Yisrael.
My Zaidi is Yurtzeit tonight. Shmuel ben Dov.
Shmuel ben Dov, neshama should have an aliyah. Okay, so now the Gemara says we're holding on the bottom line. Also, as we were schmoozing before we started, the world lost a very fine man. Who was, when I was Rav in Staten Island, he was for 1 year president of our Kehillah, Rabbi Yonah Feinstein, otherwise known as Jeff Feinstein. Yonah Aryeh Leib ben Chaim, his neshama should have a great aliyah. So the Gemara tells us an interesting din of Rabbi Yochanan's. We know that there's such a thing as a lav hanitak la'aseh, that a lav that is connected to an aseh, like it says loy sigzal, but then it says v'hishav esagzela. So if you return the gzela, you don't get malchus for the lav. That's called the lav hanitak la'aseh. Or another example is loy sisiru mimenu ad boker. You shouldn't leave the carbon past the morning. But v'anoisim mimenu ad boker be'eish tisrayfer. You should burn it in fire. So it gives us an aseh, and that aseh removes the lav. The question is, what about if the aseh preceded the lav? Now, an example of that is that there is a din about a rapist, that he has to marry the woman if she concedes. He has to marry the woman, and it says "Loisucha l'shalcha kol yom." He can't send her away. Now it says "Loisia l'isha" before the lav. So the question is, an aseh that's before the lav, does that remove the malchus? Or is it only if the aseh comes after the lav? So now let's see the Gemara inside, as the Gemara starts on the bottom of Daf Yudalad Amid Beis. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol lois aseh, shekadma aseh, any los aseh, any negative prohibition that has before it the aseh instead of after it, by gezela, by noiser, it's afterwards is the positive commandment. If the aseh precedes the lav, then it doesn't mitigate the malchus, rather loikin alav. Amru lai. So they said to Rabbi Yochanan, Amarta, did you actually say this? Amalahu lai. He said, no, I didn't say it. Amar Rabba, Holikim Amra. By God, he did say it. And Uksiva Vitanina. And there's an example in the Torah, and it's recorded in our Mishnah. That's how it gets into our subject. It's recorded on our Mishnah. Because Ksiva, it's written about the leper, or the one who suffers from biblical gonorrhea, Vishalchu min hamachana kol tzarua v'chol zav. So that's a positive commandment, that you have to send out from the camp. Then it says, after that, a lav of v'lo yitamu es machaneim, that they shouldn't contaminate the camp. Right? So if they come into the camp, they're over a lav. So here you have an asay before the lav, and in our Mishnah it says that if a tamei enters into the mikdash, there's malchus. Tanina abala mikdash tamei. So you see here we don't say a lav anitik lasay, where the asay precedes the lav. Like over here, the asay, the positive commandment is vishalchum min hamachana. The lav is lo yitamu es machaneim. And we see where the asay precedes the lav, we say that there is malchus. Says the Gemara, elamai time kahaderbe. So then what's the reason why Rabbi Yochanan retracted? And let us take the time now to welcome in Barry Cement, Ruvain Pollack, and Yitzi Fuchs. It's wonderful to have you back joining us. Menachem Yemansky, Irving Fishbaum, and Itchy, and Shimon Klein, Dr. Udell, Michael, I'm not sure who that is, Yisrael Fisher, and Yaakov Warman, Dov Salkowitz, Dr. Block, Mark Frankel, Eddie Chazan, Saba, Shelley Zeitlin, Nachman Chapler, Abe Arbach, Moshe Lehman, Yitzi Muller, Ilya Shutman, Danny Vogel, Avram Rezepkowitz. And here in Shul, we have the pleasure of having Berish Gesseman, Chaim Kramer, Michal Avram, and Ruvain Shannon. Oh, the one who I wasn't sure who it was, I still don't know who it was. I see just a lot of letters there. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol niyeh b'dvaro. So what is the reason? What is the reason why the Rabbi Yochanan retracted? My time of kahaderbei, mishum dekashlei oinus, the rapist. The Tanya, oinus shegiresh, a oinus, a rapist that divorced the woman that he raped. Im Yisraelu, if he's a Yisrael, so a Yisrael could marry back a divorcee. Mauzer ve'eino loike. He could take her back, and he doesn't get malchus. Im kayanu, but if he's a kain, now kain can't take her back because he's not allowed to marry a divorcee. Then loike, he gets malchus ve'eino mauzer. So, but what do we see over here? Im Yisraelu, if he's a Yisrael mauzer, he could take her back. Ve'eino loike. But even though it says the asay v'lo yisiyah leisha before the lav. Amai lo yisaseh shekadmoi asehu. That's a case of lo yisaseh where the aseh is before, and therefore we should say, according to the rule of Rabbi Yochanan, v'lil kei. According to what you're saying, it should get malchus, because if you say that if the aseh precedes the lav, it's not a lav anitik laseh, then there should be malchus. Amar Ula says, you know why there's no malchus? Because the v'lo yisiyah leisha is extra. And since it's extra, we use it to serve as a lav hanitik la'aseh. Amar Ula lo yoyma lo yisiyah leisha ba'oinus. It seems to be redundant to say that the rapist should take her as a wife by rape. Why? Because v'ligmar mamaitzi shemra. We should learn it out from the man who maligns his wife and says that I didn't find her virginity. And by the man who maligns his wife, he also has to marry her. And we should learn it out and say a simple kal v'chaimer. And that is, he didn't do an action. It's not like rape. He didn't do an action. He only spoke. Speaking is not an action. He has to marry her. Einus, a rapist who does an action, so then if it's not needed, why does it say if it's not needed for before, if that if he divorces her, he should take her back, and it makes it she'im girish yazer, and it makes it a lav anitik lasei, and that's why there's no malchus. Says the Gemara, no, this doesn't work. Va'akati oinis m'moitzi shemra loigamar. You cannot learn out rape from moitzi shemra. The ikal mifrach mala moitzi shemra. By moitzi shemra, there's a stringency, and that stringency is that there's both malchus and payment of the knas. We learn that out because the pasuk says a lashon of the yisru, we punish, and you have to pay. So that's why over there, as the Gemara says, the case where you malign the wife, there's both malchus and payment, which is not true by the rapist. So the Gemara says, but say it the other way around. Let it not say lo yisir leisha by maligning v'ligmar me'aynis, and learn it out from aynis, learn it out from the rapist. Or ma aynis, where there's no malchus and payment. She'ein aloika mishalem. Amar Achman of lo yisir leisha, he has to marry her. Moitzi shemra, where you flogged and you pay loy kol shechem. So v'lama nema. So why does it say v'lo yisir leisha by moitzi shemra? If it's not needed by Moitzi Shemra, Taneu Inyan Lo'inus. Apply it to the rape. And if it's not needed for before, because it says V'lo Yisir Le'isha before, Taneu Inyan La'acharav, that if you divorce her, you have a mitzvah to take her back, making it a lav anitik lasei, and that's why there's no malchus. Says Gemara, you can't learn out Moitzi Shemra from Einus. You can't learn out a man who maligns his wife from rape, because maybe the din by rape that you have to take her as a wife is only because it was an action. Ella says the Gemara lo yaima lo yisir leisha b'maitzi shemra. By Moitzi Shemra, it says Lo Yisir Leisha. Lo Yisir Leisha implies that you have to take her as a wife. But what's the case of Moitzi Shemra where they're already married? Right? They were already married, and he says he didn't find a Basulim. So the term Lo Yisir Leisha is not suitable for Moitzi Shemra. Shari Yishtahi. Lama Nemar. So why does it say Lo Yisir Leisha? Im Eino Inyan Moitzi Shemra, Taneu Inyan La'inus. Use it for rape. They may not fun of beforehand, because it already says by rape you should marry her. Taneu Inyan La'acharav, that if you divorce her, you have to take her back, making it a lav anitik lasei, and therefore there's no malchus. Says the Gemara, well, maybe the V'lo Yisir Leisha by Moitzi Shemra is not for rape, it's for Moitzi Shemra itself. That if he divorces her, he has to take her back. The aim of Inyan, the fun of the Moitzi Shemra, Tameu Inyan La'achar of the day, that if he sends her away and takes her back, the loy lucky says, well, you're right, ein achanami. So then, how do you know by Einus? But va'asi Einus v'gamer minei. We learn out rape from Moitzi Shemra. Says, well, you can't do that. But my gomer minei, iba kal v'chaymer, iba mamatzino, whether you want to use a kal v'chaymer, whether you want to use a comparison, mamatzino is like an analogy, either way you can't do it, because we said that there's a difference, and that is maybe there's no malchus by Moitzi Shemra because there's no maisa. Moitzi Shemra shekain lo yaisa maisa. Ela Amar Rava. You know why, in the case of the rape, there's no malchus? Because v'lo yisir leisha means that you have to take her back your whole life. Your whole life, there's a mitzvah to take her back. The whole life, ba'amoid v'chazar kai. And therefore, since v'lo yisir leisha is essentially a commandment always to take her back, So it's not a case where the asay precedes the lav, because there's an asay to take her back if you're over the lav and you send her away. Amar Rava kol yamav v'amad v'hechzer. All his days he has a mitzvah to take her back. V'chen ki asa Ravin Amar Rabbi Yochanan. When Ravin arrived, he said tak in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, kol yamav, all his life, v'amoid v'chazer kai. Always have to take her back. So the Gemara says, wait a second. But you're telling me, in a regular situation, where the asay precedes the lav, there's going to be malchus. Like in the example of if the asay precedes the lav, there's going to be malchus. But why? Remember, we said that the model of malchus is what it says next to the parsha of malchus, the lav of leisachsam sharbedishay, that Barry is not allowed to muzzle his animal when he's plowing with it. And over there's no asay before the lav. A lav that has an asay before it is not similar to the prototype lav of malchus, which is muzzling an animal. There's no positive commandment not to muzzle the animal. Amalei, so he says, Mishum dechsiv bei rachmana asay yisera, because the Torah adds an extra asay beforehand, that's no reason to mitigate the malchus. Migragara, does that make it less of an offense? To the contrary, it makes it more of an offense. Says the Gemara, then why don't we say the same thing by the asay that comes after the lav? Iachi lav shenitik lasay nami, where you say don't steal and return the stolen goods. Lema mishum dekasabei rachmana asay yisera, because the Torah says an extra positive commandment, migragara, that detracts from the malchus. Says the Gemara, no, where the asay comes after the lav, that's coming to remove the lav. Amalei ahulin nituke lavu da'asa. In other words, you repair the situation when you return that which you stole. You repair the situation when that which you left over after its permitted time, you burn. So now the Gemara gets into a complex discussion. Now what makes it complex is it's going to talk about a brisa. We didn't even learn the brisa yet. It's always hard when the Gemara refers to something that we didn't learn yet. So let's talk about it a little bit outside.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question on what we just learned, or should we wait?
Well, let's say, I just said we're going to learn something very complex, so I think you should wait. And that shouldn't be so complex. It's good to see Aaron Swade joining us. Aaron Swade likes the complex Gemaras. Anyway, when it says v'lo yisiya le'isha, it could either mean marry her right away, or it could mean constantly marry her. That means whenever you send her away, your whole life you have to take her back. Now, Rabbi Yochanan, who says this is not an asay that precedes the lav, is because he holds that when it says v'lo yisiya le'isha, that's a lifelong commandment. That whenever he sends her away, he has to take her back. According to him, how could there be malchus? It's open-ended. We don't know to give malchus because he might take her back in 6 months. He might take her back in 2 years. L'yisiya le'isha is that you have to take her back, so there's always a command to take her back. The only way, according to Rabbi Yochanan, that there's going to be malchus is if if he does something to ensure that he won't be able to take her back. What's an example of that? The Gemara gives an example if he makes a vow, al das rabim, a vow that can't be annulled, it's called al das rabim, that he won't take her back. So then, that's when he gets malchus, because he's mavatal, the mitzvah. He can never take her back, because he made a vow not to take her back. If you learn loisiyah leisha is not whole lifetime, but right away, so then, if he doesn't take her back right away, so then he would get malchus. So the Gemara says, since Rabbi Yochanan is explaining that v'lo yisiyah leisha is not an example of an assay before the lav, because v'lo yisiyah leisha means that you always have to take her back, so it also is subsequent to the divorce. So then the only time you could get malchus is if you make a vow not to take her back, and you're mavatal the possibility of fulfilling the mitzvah zazeh. So the Gemara says, let's see it inside. Hanicha, 2 lines from the bottom. Hanicha lamanda amar bitlai v'loi bitlai. Did he nullify it or did he not nullify it? And it's only where he nullifies it by making a vow that he won't take her back. That's the only case that he would be chayav malchus. El lamandi amar, that kaimu, if he takes her back right away, he doesn't get malchus. L'loi kaimu, if he doesn't take her back right away, he does get malchus. So then, ma'iklamema, that can't be going according to Rabbi Yochanan, because then v'lo yisiyah leisha doesn't mean constantly at every moment. Says the Gemara, well, that's not a problem, because we're explaining Rabbi Yochanan's opinion as we start the top of Tezvav and Beis. We're going according to Rabbi Yochanan. Ha'amalei Rabbi Yochanan the Tana. Rabbi Yochanan said to the Tana, that was the broadcaster who taught it to the people, Tani batloi chayev, if you nullify the ability to take her back by making a vow that you won't take her back, chayev, you get malchus. Loi bitlu pater, if you don't nullify it, you're pater. So the Tani, now we're going to see the Braisa, where there's a difference between bitlu and loy bitlu and kimu v'loy kimu. The Tani Tana Kamei de Rabbi Yochanan. Kol mitzvahs loy saseh sheyesh ba kumaseh. Any lav that has a positive commandment, so kayim aseh sheba, so you have a lav not to steal, and there's a positive commandment to return the gezela, kayim aseh sheba potter. Bitel asay sheba, if you cancel the asay, chayiv. So, Amalei, so Rabbi Yochanan said to him that that's not an accurate teaching. You're mixing kayim and bitel, because that's what it did over here. It said, if you're mavatal it, you're chayiv. If you're kayim it, you're not chayiv. So amalei my ka'amrit, you're mixing it. Either you should say kayim potter, if you fulfill the asa, you're potter, loy kayim, if you don't, you're chayiv. Or bitel chayiv, if you nullify it, you're chayiv, loy bitel potter. And Rabbi Yochanan says, I hold, Tani, bitlai v'loy bitlai. That means that if the rapist divorced her and then made a vow never to take her back, so he's mavatal the possibility of taking her back, he's chayiv. If he doesn't nullify it, even if he didn't yet take her back yet, he's not going to be chayiv, because he could still take her back, because v'lo yisiyah leisha is a mitzvah one's whole life. Reb Shimon Lakish says, Kaimai, no, v'lo yisiyah leisha means to take her back right away. So Kaimai, if he's mekayim it, he doesn't get malchus. V'lo kaimai, then he does get malchus. Now, the problem is, according to Rabbi Yochanan, when does the hasra have to be given? When do you have to give the warning? So let's say the rapist is Chatzkel, and the girl is Dina. So when does he have to give the warning? You have to give him the warning when he wants to divorce her, because it says Lo yisuchal, that's the lab, Lo yisuchal l'shalcha kol yama. So, according to Rabbi Yochanan, what kind of warning does he have to give? He has to give, I'm warning you that if you send her away and then you make a vow not to take her back, you're going to get malchus. That's Hasra Suffolk. That's a doubtful Hasra. You can't say to him, if you send her away, you're going to get malchus, because the only way he's going to get malchus is if he's mavatal the ability to take her back by making a vow. But we don't know if he's going to do that or not. So that's Hasra Suffolk. So, b'may kamifligi, b'asra Suffolk kamifligi, can we give a conditional Hasra? Ma'asra Hasra Suffolk, shma Hasra. You can give him Hasra that if you send her away and then make a vow not to take her back, you're going to get malchus. Or Ma'asra Reish Lakish says Hasra Suffolk lo shma Hasra. And therefore, the only case that it could be is that we hold that the Leisiyah Ish is a mitzvah to take her back right away. So we tell him, if you send her away and you don't take her back right away, you're going to get malchus. So that's Asras Vadai. And that would be the opinion of Reish Lakish. We're going to continue this tomorrow, so you'll have what to really look forward to. And now we're going to have the Chumash here.